Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's enjoying the conference. I gotta say, I was here yesterday and even today. I just noticed with this conference specifically, I just liked the format. I felt like you could really, again, I ran into old friends, met a lot of new friends, and I just found it was really easy to connect with people. Sometimes you go to these big conferences and you're running around from room to room because it's multiple floors, multiple buildings. So, first I just wanted to start off say thanks for the organizers, the Strategy Institute. I think they've done an amazing job, so if we can give them a round of applause. And I think the AV guys haven't missed a beat. I haven't seen any technical difficulties or issues, so let's give them a round of applause. All right, so let's get into it. So today I'm going to be talking about building credibility with executive teams. And you know what? I figured a good way to start, and yesterday when I met with a few of the panelists that were here, it was funny because it was the first thing that came up in a conversation because, Dave was talking about, how he has some legacy systems and their technical debt, and they want to shift off of it because it's hard to find the talent to continue to manage that, but then it's going to cost so much that it doesn't really make business sense, right? So we were talking about some of these challenges, and really at the end of the day, I think it comes down to us as data leaders to make sure that executives within an organization understand kind of the trade-offs, the pros, the cons, and really make sure that they have that understanding. So again, just about me a little bit really quick. So my name is Iyyad Jariri. Very fortunate to have worked with some of the biggest and most iconic brands in Canada, Canadian Tire, Loblaw. Loblaw acquired Shoppers Drug Mart, did a lot of work with them actually at the pharmacies and working closely with pharmacy teams on different projects and initiatives. Did some consulting work with Sienna, and most recently, right now, I'm working at Interac. So again, my experience spans retail, healthcare, as well as fintech. I got the opportunity to work on a number of just data disciplines throughout my experience and the various initiatives that I've been able to manage. And just from a personal perspective, really enjoy spending time with family. The car there is on a free Uber, so usually my evenings, two of my boys play rep soccer, so I'm at the soccer fields usually from 6 till about 9, so that's my life. I think I see some people nodding their heads, so they're probably living that same life. I just recently started to get into Muay Thai, so enjoying that. And aside from that, just sports, reading, and podcasts. So, all right. So to get into it, I thought this is a really good way to frame it up, and I actually tested it yesterday in the conversation that I was having with Dave and Santosh. So again, when you go to a restaurant, typically, there's certain things that you care about, right? So, whether the food quality is good, you have good service, whether everything that you want is on the menu, and whether they have a diverse menu where everybody can satisfy their dietary restrictions, if you're gluten-free, dairy-free. But at the end of the day, so these are typically the things that, people care about, right? But I don't know, how many people here actually care about what type of ovens they use in the kitchen to prepare the meal? Nobody, right? How many people care about the types of pots and pans, whether they're non-stick or stainless steel, the type of knives that they use? Nobody really cares, right? And this is really, when I look at this scenario, it's really akin to when you're delivering data products and a data service to your executives. These are the things they care about, right? Like they care about quality insights. They care about, getting things quick and fast, seeing the value fast. These are the types of things that executives actually care about. So if you're having, sorry, this clicker's a little bit. So if you're having a nightmare, of an experience trying to get that service to them, I'm sure some of you have seen Hell's Kitchen, this guy's going around yelling at people, and it's a disaster back there, right? And sometimes that happens within our data shops, right? You're trying to get the right data, the data's not the right quality, and you're scrambling, and it takes a lot of effort, and you always think about it, okay, these guys don't really have an appreciation for what I'm doing and what I'm having to go through to get them this, really nice dashboard, because all they care about is that really nice dashboard that's going to give them the insights that they want, when they want it, and making sure that it's all right. So again, the path to success is really never easy. I know how many people can kind of relate to that? Just show of hands really quick. Yeah, okay, so most people here, okay. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about that and what you really should be focusing on as you're speaking with data executives. So in terms of the agenda, again, covering a number of aspects. I'm not going to read it line for line, just covering a number of aspects as it relates to building executive trust and credibility. So again, I think people can probably relate to this. Again, data initiatives they're not easy, right? So I've had experience, with data products, in my previous experience trying to launch a KYC, know your customer, like a CDP, customer data platform initiative. It's not easy. We were trying to build it in-house. Took way too long. I think executives got really antsy and weren't really seeing the value of it. It was one of the first things that got shut down when we did a reorg. Same thing when you look at data platform modernizations, you're moving whether it's from on-prem to cloud or cloud to another cloud because you got a better deal. Again, you really want to make sure that you're delivering value quick. So, the common things that I've learned through these experiences is, time to business value is critical. So when you do have these large initiatives or programs, you really want to chunk it out in a way where you're delivering incremental value and making sure that you're visible and you're doing that. You don't say, okay, we're going to launch this program, you have a kickoff, and then you think you're going to come back a year and a half later and be like, hey, we're done, and everybody's going to be cool with that, right? I think that doesn't really jive these days. So again, why is it important to build the credibility? So again, I'm sure most of you, again, have experienced this, where if you want additional investment in what you're doing, your teams, again, to keep them motivated, they want to use the latest tech. I mean, this industry moves so fast. There's always new advancements, new developments. So I think you really want to make sure that you're partnering with your executives and showcasing that value. You want to be invited to the table. You don't want to be somebody that's an afterthought, right? I think a lot of times, and I've experienced this as well, is data's an afterthought. They realize, oh, we need to measure this, we need to measure that. You're working on a big initiative, and then they're looping you in at the very end. You want to be seen as somebody that is an advisor, somebody that is going to be invited to the table as part of the process and not an afterthought. And making sure that you're continuously delivering that value also results in you being able to leverage some of these new tools and new capabilities that are out there to continue to mature your practice within the organization. And one of the key things too, so I mentioned I did some work with Shoppers Drug Mart. So one of the first things that I did is I actually went to a pharmacy and I worked with the pharmacist. I saw how they were entering data into the system. Aside from understanding the lay of the land when it came to their data environment, I really wanted to make sure that I understood the business, and I went there and I was, again, job shadowing with pharmacists, just so I understand, okay, hey, you guys are inputting that free text, but there could be a lot of data quality issues. So really trying to understand the data from source to target so that you can make the necessary adjustments without having to spend a lot of time after the fact doing all these data corrections. So seeing where you can put in the controls up front, that was ideal. Again, that's one example, but really understanding your business and getting a seat at the table. So when I go to these meetings now, I understood what I was talking about and I knew the rules because I really got a good sense of the operations. I did this for about 2 weeks and I'd sit at the table. People were astounded that I've only been working with the business for a month. They thought I was there for years just because I would chime in on some of the detailed aspects of how things work. And so with that, when you look at, you want to continue to deliver that value, but then there's also building out the capabilities, right? So you want to continue to build out capabilities, mature capabilities, drive efficiencies. But again, if you lean one way or another, it won't work out in your favor. You really need to figure out what's that balance, and I think it varies by organization and where you are in the process today. So the risk here, again, is too much focus on the short term could really result in just having these fragile tactical solutions. So then if you were to leave, things would just fall off or fall apart. I think, as, again, responsible professionals, we should be setting things up in a way where it's sustainable, and you're not trying to be the person that's, okay, if you're not there, then everything's going to fall apart, right? So I think I see some people laughing, and I think so. There's probably some of that happening, I think, and all of us. And I was even talking to Neha before, and I know we were talking about some of those scenarios. So you really want to make sure that you set things up in a way where there is business continuity, and you're not having to be there every, Wednesday morning to press a button or something like that. So, and then also from a long-term perspective, as I was mentioning earlier, in terms of some of the experiences that I have. So when you do take too long to deliver things, again, and that's your primary focus, and you're very inward focused on your capabilities, on your practice, and again, I've seen this, and there's a lot of kind of data management purists out there, I got to get this 100% right, but you really have to look at the trade-offs, because if you go down that road, you have to think about, okay, who cares and why do they care? That's something that I always used to iterate with my team, who cares and why do they care? And it has to be, the person that's caring has to be somebody from the business. So you have to be doing work that actually drives value for the business. And again, it's a balancing act. And for example, today at Interac, what we do is we have squads that are set up. So we have a squad that's set up to deliver on data products. So it's a data product squad. And then we have a squad that's set up to deliver on capabilities. So we continue, and they have different people on each squad. So we'll have, let's say the capability squad, we'll have a lot of the, maybe some architects, some platform engineers. So again, it's how do we continue to evolve or upgrade or, maybe harmonize or streamline our tech and just to get better, more nimble and get better in terms of the way that we do things. And then, our data product squad is really meant to, work closely with the business and make sure we're continuously delivering, whether it's report or different things for the various lines of business. So in terms of, how to go about building that, so again, there's some principles here that I just wanted to go through. So again, one of them, and one of the most important ones, is tying every initiative to business outcomes and partnering with those executives. So you would align with the business unit, and again, depending on kind of where you sit, you might not have direct access to the executives, even if it's your business stakeholder, right? So if you're let's say manager, senior manager, and you have access to other managers or directors on the business side, meet with them, connect with them, make sure they're aligned with it, make sure they're also sponsoring your work, and then they can take that messaging up to their executive. So I think, again, that business alignment is critical. And again, this is one of the first things when we had a reorg, and I saw our executive did a really great job of this, is the first thing that he did is, once we kind of determined that some of the projects we were working on, maybe they weren't a high priority, he actually met with all the business executives, our chief technology and analytics officer, and he actually had very tactical, outcome-based commitments that he wanted to deliver for the different product lines across the organization. And I thought that was great, because then it really showed it wasn't a, if we build it, they would come, because some of those initiatives, that's what we were doing. It was more of, how do I deliver value to you, and how do we measure that, and how do we make sure that that's actually going to help drive our stock price up. And then it's also around, like I was mentioning before, just the trade-offs, right? Sometimes you might have some technical debt, but again, if it's working, and if you're just telling an executive, hey, I'm going to move this stuff or this reporting from here to here, but you're getting the same reporting, they're probably not going to care. Sometimes it might be difficult to move off of certain things, so really focus on where you can add that value and make sure that executives are also aligned to that approach and the value that you'll be delivering. And again, here, so this is around sequencing. So again, don't just list off a number of projects. Have a vision and say, hey, we want to be AI ready, for example. Okay, so here are the things that we need to do to get to being AI ready. So really show it as like a journey, and it's a continuous journey. Again, like as we mentioned, data is really, it's a product. It's not a project. It's not a once and done type of initiative. And again, here, depending on where you are, so again, as I mentioned, you really want to make sure you're delivering value first. So again, focusing on quick wins, building out capabilities when you get the chance, and then looking at how do we continue to scale and mature the capabilities. So again, I know everybody's probably at different phases in terms of where they are, but really the first thing you want to tackle is building that credibility and delivering the value within your organization. And then when you're working on some of these longer term capabilities and technologies, you do want to frame it as an enabler. So again, like I was mentioning, the whole AI enablement piece, again, you really have to have a good narrative around, okay, how doing this work and the outcomes that are going to come out of that work is going to lead to doing things better, faster, more efficiently in the long run. All right, and when it comes to communicating ROI, so you want to make sure you do it in a way, and you don't want to, because I've seen this too, everybody here is probably passionate about data. You start to like geek out on, how many tables and how much data you have and, these different ways of doing things. So I think, it's all good, but it's good in the right conversations and in the right context. So I think you really want to make sure, you're not talking about like rows and tables and, getting into too much of the technical jargon, and it's really about how are you helping the business, how are you making sure that you're driving revenue, maybe there's a cost avoidance play. So again, really taking it back to those business metrics, and then also just translating that data into relevant signals, again, as it relates to business metrics, growing the business. Maybe it could be strategic optionality, looking at doing some sort of analysis and insights and being able to actually influence the strategy of the company. And then finally, making sure you have that compelling story. So it's bringing the data side of things and then also, helping executives and leaders envision, okay, here's where we are today, here's what our world looks like today, and here's where it can be, right? And using data and facts to actually help tell that story, but you have to be a good storyteller when it comes to selling that vision and selling, the value that you're bringing to the organization. And again, that'll help you to get some of the investment. So again, a lot of what I'm saying, like again, this is, almost very repetitive, but intentionally so, right? Because again, it's really not that hard to do, but it's easier said than done. Like I think everybody understands, because I've seen this happen over and over again, where working with data teams, they get very fixated on the data and the tools and the technology, and they want to do these cool new things, and they see this nice new shiny tool, and they're like, okay, hey, let's try this out, let's see what it could do, and it's great to, and you want to have a certain amount of your bandwidth allocated to experimentation and innovation. But at the end of the day, you really need to make sure that you have to have that relentless focus on value and driving value within an organization. And in terms of, because yesterday as part of the panel as well, we talked about scaling AI and how it's also important to educate executives and help them understand that AI isn't just some script you run. It's a system, and it's something that you have to manage properly and make sure you have all the proper controls, operationalize it in a way that's responsible as well. So a lot of that comes with education. So when you look at executives, again, they're obviously very capable individuals, but they're not data specialists, right? So if you think you're sitting down with talking to somebody from your team or maybe your boss, they don't really get to that level. They're really focused on outcomes. So when you do meet with executives, you want to make sure you're focused on those outcomes and helping them understand how the work that you're doing leads to improved business KPIs and outcomes. And then also, if you're going there to ask for money, again, make sure, hey, if we don't get this money, our current tech stack is going to be out of support, and here's the risk that we'll have, and be able to really articulate what those risks are, what they look like. Or maybe, again, it is an investment to unlock some capabilities or build for the future so that you're more future ready. So you really want to make sure you have those stories. And then again, make it simple. So make sure you have some of these taglines, right? So again, you can obviously make it more prescriptive, but again, helping them understand that, similar to your financial data, you have a whole financial team that manages your finances and your financial data. Well, when it comes to data, you also need to have a knowledgeable team that understands how to manage data, how to make sure that all teams within the organization have the data that they need when they need it in the quality that they're expecting, and that's not an easy thing. So I think it's a lot of education needs to happen, and I think you could do that whether it's through steer codes. You can pull executives aside and just chat with them to say, hey, what are you doing in your business today? How can data help? So having some of those conversations, building that relationship, and then just seeing how you can deliver value. And you might even come up with ideas that way, right? So again, just being mindful, because I know even today too, and I fall into this, there's always a lot of meetings, you're just running around, but you really have to be thoughtful in terms of how you're spending your time. And making sure you are carving out time to meet with business folks, make sure you understand their wants, their needs, and making sure they're also, advocates for the work that you're doing. And I found a really good thing too is having a communication plan. So if you're, a data team and you don't have a communication plan to say, hey, maybe you want to, release a newsletter. Maybe you want to do a lunch and learn for the organization, or maybe you want to, in your town hall, make sure that you're talking about some really cool things that you're doing. So you have to have a really good communication plan and see where you can plug in a lot of the good work that you're doing, just so that you can get that exposure across the organization. So that's something that I would highly recommend to data teams and data leaders. And again, when it comes to managing expectations of the board and senior leadership, again, you really have to be clear on what it is you can do and what you can't do. So don't overpromise something and then underdeliver. I think everybody knows that's not a great idea, and usually doesn't end very well. So again, you really want to make sure that you're very explicit, very clear, and even on your side, just do your homework to make sure, okay, what can we actually do, and try to have as little assumptions as possible. And then also making sure that the executives and the business folks you're working with do have an understanding of your plans, major milestones. Like I said, chunk things out in a way where you're not saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this thing, and you're going to see the value of it a year or a year and a half from now. So you really want to make sure that you're planning things out in a way, again, where you're agile, you deliver things fast. And again, I've experienced this quite a bit. You don't know what you don't know. So when you're, let's say, implementing new technology, you run into all sorts of issues because, whether it's firewalls or permissions or there's a lot that goes into it, or maybe there's a feature in the tool that you thought would work this way, but then it doesn't, and then you're working with the vendor to resolve it. So there's a lot of things I think that can go wrong. So I think setting up those expectations and that, hey, this is something new we're doing, and there might be some setbacks, but at the end of the day, we're going to learn as we go, and it's going to help us move faster. Okay, and here, so again, just going back to building that relationship with your executives, you do want to create those opportunities where executives and business teams can stress test or pressure test what you're doing. Again, you want to make sure that you have really good rationale around the work and the value that you're bringing forward. And again, let's say there's a laundry list of things they want you to do. So again, sit down with them, help them help you to prioritize the work that you're doing. And also, if there are certain things that you're doing and they question it, I think it's a good opportunity for you to get that feedback to say, is this actually valuable? Because I know there is a lot of work that, as data professionals, we say, yeah, this is important. And again, going back to, I've worked with some folks who are data purists, and there's certain ways they want to do things, and it's the right way to do it, but it just might not be the right time to do it. So how do you negotiate, and how do you have those conversations around those various trade-offs? And then, yeah, same thing, just building that rapport, make sure you have that executive sponsorship. So again, it's great to have your own initiatives that you want to do, but again, make sure somebody from the business sponsors it, understands the value, and is going to get behind it. Okay, so with that, again, really common theme. Again, in my mind, successful data leaders are proactive. Again, so to me, the measure of success, if you're always brought to the table last minute and you're not, being engaged in terms of, hey, here's something new that we want to do. Can you help us pull some analytics? Can you help us pull some insights to see if it's the right approach or the right thing to do? I think you really need to figure out how do you get to that point, and how are you going to be mindful about creating the right relationships, creating the right mechanisms in terms of, how often you meet with executives, how do you report back, how do you hold yourself accountable to the commitments that you're going to make to executives to help move the needle forward. And again, at the end of the day, when executives see that and you are building the value, you're delivering the value, building trust, then it becomes a lot easier conversation when you do want to do some really new and exciting things, right? Because I think everybody wants to see how they can push the envelope, how they can continue to drive scalability, performance, bringing down your price per performance, leveraging some of the new technologies like AI and really scaling that. So again, if you want the investments to do these things, you have to be delivering value on a continuous basis. So you almost have to be a little bit paranoid about it, but again, that's something that you really need to focus on in order to make sure that you are seen as that strategic business partner and not just an order taker when they need certain data or they need reports. They're tapping on you, and where you have an environment where, again, it's very reactionary. They're working on a project and they're like, oh yeah, we need this data. How are we going to measure success? Try to plug yourself in there and ask, hey, how are you guys measuring success? What does success look like? So build the right relationships, ask the right questions, and really be seen as that strategic partner within an organization. So with that, on a lighter note, go Team Canada. First game is on Friday. So I see a lot of you see a lot of flags that like Portugal and Argentina and this, but I want to see more Canadian flags. Let's support the team. When they get kicked out, then we can whip out the Spanish flag and the Argentinian flag and all that, right? So, all right, and with that, that's it. And remember, use Interac whenever you can. E-transfer, debit. Yeah, sure. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Microphone's good. Okay. It's Fahim from Vancouver. I asked a few questions previously. I think one of the things that I hear a lot from most of the speakers is you guys all come from advanced cultural transformed companies that are more mature. You have competencies and functions in executives and capabilities against which you can build more foundation. So I wanted to ask to see what kind of advice you'd give to businesses that are early in their data transformation journey and maturity, where that real challenge is to say, hey, executive, I know you want the AI thing, but that's long term because we need good foundations. But you need value now so that I can justify this and move it forward. So we're going to have to do things wrong. And then, that's the executive side, but then the same kind of dimensionality of immaturity in some organizations where EA isn't a good function in there yet. It's an establishing function, so it may be advisory and not compliance-based. It may not be front end. So, having gated processes aren't necessarily there. How do you sort of help organizations move that needle forward from that maturity perspective?
Yeah, I think when you go back to that roadmap slide that I had, it's really about quick wins at the end of the day. So again, you got to see what you have to work with. So for example, I had a VP at one point, and his claim to fame was, as part of our loyalty program, when you sign up, they were looking at analytics around just the gender, right? And they found that there was something really off because I think there was more males that had signed up to the loyalty program, but really, they know that the users are more female. So it turned out that within the UI, the default was male, and it was something as simple as him, recommending that they change that to blank it out so that they can get more accurate analytics as it comes to the demographics, right? So I think there's different ways that you can tackle data problems within an organization, and I don't know if it necessarily has to be, going all out and, implementing these large platforms, but I think if you can start small and figure out, okay, how can I start getting better integrated with the system, with the business, understanding their challenges, and then from there seeing what are some use cases that you can actually deliver with what you have. And then as you start delivering that value, then that's where you can start to think more longer term and think of a vision. Okay, now that I understand the business, I understand here are some of the things that they want to do, here are their priorities. How do you start to build out that longer term roadmap and get that investment? So yeah, it's tough, and it's not easy, right? But I think the key thing is you really have to go in there and just make sure you can deliver some sort of value, deliver it quick, and then also if you have a really good understanding of what the business is looking to do and where they want to go, and you feel like you can put together a really strong business case around how to get that investment, then go out and do it. But you really need to take that business first kind of lens and not say, hey, everybody's doing all this really cool stuff with data and they're standing up these big platforms that cost, you know, millions of dollars. We should do that too. Like that's not the right approach. Yeah, sorry, that was my bad. Maybe I went a little bit more, but I can chat. Yeah, if people want to chat, I'm happy to chat outside of this too. So, all right, thank you.